Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak. And he will show you things to come. He shall glorify me, for he shall receive of mine, and shall show it unto you.
In chapter 16, verse 2, this is on Thursday evening in the upper room. They'll make outcasts from the synagogues of you. They will kill you, thinking they are offering service to God.
And cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
During the expulsion of 1492, thousands of Jews flee over the border into Portugal, swelling the Jewish population there and stirring up age-old racial tensions. In the resulting turmoil, Portuguese Jews are forced to convert to Christianity, and by 1532, King João III insists that Portugal have its own Inquisition. In its attempts to enshrine Catholicism as Spain's only national religion, the Spanish Inquisition imprisons innocent citizens, confiscates property, destroys families, and puts thousands of people to death. The Spanish government's desperate solution is to order its Jews to leave Spain forever or convert to Christianity. Many choose to leave, but others, weary of the ceaseless persecution, opt to give up the religion of their ancestors in order to stay in Mother Spain.
The Church, after all, does have some responsibility historically. Whatever the Roman Inquisition did wrong, it's impossible to say that it wasn't the papacy who did it.
All scholars of the Inquisition must face a central, disturbing question. How did an institution of the Church become the instrument by which thousands of human lives were destroyed over the course of 6 centuries? Among modern scholars, one obvious question has led to more debate than any other. Were the conversos truly practicing the Jewish religion in secret, or were they simply scapegoats of bigotry? Urged on by Inquisitor General Torquemada, in March of 1492, King Ferdinand issues another edict of expulsion. Jews are given 4 months to accept baptism or leave Spain. In the months that follow, nearly half Spain's Jewish population, an estimated 40,000 people, take flight. The rest remain and convert to Christianity.
This is obviously a tailor-made case for the Inquisition, to go in and try and sort these people out and make them practice Christianity.
It did torture people, it did levy heavy fines. It did burn people. There were fanatic theologians in the Inquisition. There were anti-Semites in the Inquisition. That's undeniable.
No matter how infrequent, the Spanish have precise rules for their torture. Prisoners, male and female, remain naked throughout the session with only a small cloth to cover their private parts.
Now, not all the clergy of the day were celibate, and not all of those who were celibate could be able to look on a scene like this over and over again and feel no twinge of sadism, no twinge of sexual satisfaction. To say that this could go on century after century is to completely misunderstand the nature of human sexuality.
The toca, or water torture, becomes a favorite of the Spanish inquisitors. During this nightmarish ordeal, the prisoner's mouth is held forcibly open while a strip of cloth is lowered down the throat. Then a slow stream of water pours down the throat, saturating the cloth and causing the prisoner to gag violently. Under the Spanish Inquisition, torture could not be administered more than 3 times and never for more than 15 minutes per session. Statements made by prisoners under torture are not legal unless repeated 24 hours later away from the torture chamber. Inquisitors do break the rules, but some do it out of ignorance rather than malevolence. Among those burned at the stake are priests, nuns, English soldiers, and even 3 children who go to their deaths alongside their mother. Less than 3 years after the first discovery of Protestants in Spain, Protestantism is literally burnt out of existence. The Portuguese Inquisition quickly sets to work against the usual suspects. Between 1547 and 1580, 34 auto de fe judgment ceremonies take place in Portugal, with almost 2,000 penitents and 169 executions. The persecutions are so deadly that conversos, many of whom have only recently immigrated to Portugal from Spain, choose to move back to their homeland and face what seems to be the lesser of 2 evil institutions. The first waves of priests from Spain also consider it their holy duty to lead the Native Americans away from their pagan beliefs and to embrace Christianity. Published in 1486, Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, lays out theological support, legal advice, and various techniques for accusing, torturing, and sentencing witches. It lives in infamy as the document that creates the archetypical image of the female witch and as one of the most overtly woman-hating works in all of world literature.
When a woman thinks alone, she thinks only evil. Since they are feebler in mind and body, it is not surprising they should come more under the spell of witchcraft. All witchcraft comes from a kind of lust, which in women is insatiable. Malleus Maleficarum.
I think the only lesson to be learned from the Inquisition is not to think of it as unique. It is a recurrent phenomenon, recurrent in the history of all countries, because it was a normal phenomenon. It is an international phenomenon, but more than that, it is innate in the human condition to use inquisitions as a method of imposing our cultural preferences.
That's 325 AD. Let's fast forward a little bit to the time of John Chrysostom, who lived from 349 to 407. John Chrysostom, Chrysostom means the golden mouth because he was such an eloquent preacher, the greatest preacher of his day. Now he said many beautiful, wonderful things about the Lord, but you know what he said about the Jews? Here it is from his sermon. This is what he says about Jews. Such animals when they are unfit for work, become fit for the slaughter. It was this fate then that the Jews suffered. In making themselves useless for work, they became fit for the slaughter. Do you have to join in greeting them and exchange a scant word? Shouldn't you turn away from them because they are the common corruption and disease of the whole world? Do you see that the demons dwell in their souls? The Jews themselves are demons. Consequently, we must hate both them and the synagogue all the more. This was from great Christian leader John Chrysostom. Now, between John Chrysostom and the Holocaust, there are way too many quotes I could give you, way too much anti-Semitism, but let me just give you a few examples. The year 613, persecution of Jews in Spain. All Jews who refused to be baptized had to leave the country. A few years later, the remaining Jews were dispossessed, declared as slaves, and given to pious Christians of position. All Jewish children 7 years and over were taken from their parents, given to receive a Christian education. The year 1096, the First Crusade. As the Crusaders were making their way to the Holy Land in Germany along the cities on the Rhine River alone, 12,000 Jews were killed by the Crusaders. Why? Because they were Jews. Year 1121, the Jews were driven out of Flanders. The years 1146 and 47, the beginning of the Second Crusade. The French monk Rudolph called for the destruction of the Jews as an introduction to the Second Crusade. Now, fortunately for the Jews, there was another Christian monk named Bernard of Clairvaux who, tried to tone it down. He was somewhat of a friend of the Jews, but even this friend of the Jews, Bernard of Clairvaux, said about the Jews, he called them an evil seed with a stupidity bestial and more than bestial and intelligent, coarse, dense, and as it were bovine. I mean, this guy was one of the guys who was friendly to the Jews. And a contemporary of Bernard was Peter the Venerable, another man who's considered the most beautiful, wonderful, peace-loving Christian of his generation, said, "Truly I doubt whether a Jew can be really human. I lead out from its den a monstrous animal and show it as a laughingstock in the amphitheater of the world, in the sight of all the people. I bring thee forward, thou Jew, thou brute beast, in the sight of all men." These were the wonderful church leaders. Then, of course, the Crusaders, they got to Jerusalem, and they were fighting the Muslims primarily. But while they were there in Jerusalem, the Jews all fled to the synagogue. So what did the Crusaders do? With all the Jews in the synagogue, they set the synagogue on fire and surrounded the synagogue singing the hymn, "Christ we adore thee," with the crosses on their breast and holding crosses aloft. Now, I'm not making this stuff up. You can read this stuff in history books. You can go to any library probably and find, or Barnes & Noble, find some books on this stuff. I mean, I've got here, this is from way back in 1983, a calendar of Jewish persecutions. It just kind of gives some of the highlights of Jewish persecution by Christians. And you can go through, you can read about, I mean, some of it's too gory to even talk about. I've got this book here. I don't know if any of you have seen this book by Michael L. Brown, a Jewish believer, Our Hands Are Stained with Blood. It's about the history of Christian anti-Semitism. I mean, it talks about Christians, taking Jews, not just expelling them, burning them at the stake, mutilating them, beheading them, butchering them, rapes, not just of entire communities, entire villages of Jews being burned alive. Forced conversions. 1478, Spanish Inquisition. To torture, the Spaniards said, if you Jews want to stay here, you got to convert, become Christian, become Roman Catholic. And some of them did, but then they would secretly do their Jewish stuff because they were just doing an external conversion. And so if they suspected the Jew of still secretly keeping Passover, still secretly abstaining from pork, still secretly eating unleavened bread during Passover, they would torture them to get them to confess. And then if a Jew who had converted, if he got caught doing some of that Jewish stuff, which was really biblical stuff, if he said, okay, I'll stop doing it, I'll come back to the church, they would have to go through this. This is out of Michael Brown's book. If they wanted to come back into the church, they had to be paraded through the streets, men and women alike, bareheaded, barefooted, and naked to the waist. The procession headed by a group of monks. They held unlit candles in their hands, the Jews did, indicating they were yet in spiritual darkness. They were marched through the city till they arrived at the cathedral. A chaplain would make the sign of the cross on the foreheads of these Jews, many of whom had been prominent citizens and respected leaders of their city. Then he would recite these words, "Receive the sign of the cross which you denied and which being deluded you lost. And then there would be a sermon, and then they were to be whipped in procession on each of the following 6 Fridays, naked to the waist, bareheaded, barefooted, and they were to fast on each of those 6 Fridays, and they were disqualified for the rest of their lives from holding office, benefice, or honorable employment. You know, typical treatment of the Jews in Spain. So the culmination of all this, century after century of these sorts of things, the culmination of the church's anti-Semitism was the Holocaust. The Nazis and their concentration camps and the 6 million Jews. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, but Daniel, the Nazis weren't real Christians. Well, I know that, and you know that. But what is a Jew supposed to think? I mean, think about this. What is a Jew supposed to think? Prior to the Holocaust, you had century after century after century of bloody, butchering persecution done in the name of Jesus. And the Nazis were church-going people. Most of them, they were professing Christians, Lutherans or Catholics or whatever. They were a church-going culture. And the motto of the German Christians, and this is out of Erdman's Handbook to the History of Christianity, the motto of the German Christians was, quote, the swastika on our breasts, the cross in our hearts. Also from the same Christian book, it says, a German pastor named Luthuser said these words. He said, Christ has come to us through Adolf Hitler. We know today the Savior has come. So what's a Jew supposed to think? I mean, we can say, well, those guys weren't real Christians. But what is a Jew supposed to think? At the Nuremberg war crimes trials, when the Nazis were put on trial for the war crimes, you know what they did to defend themselves? They quoted from Martin Luther, the great reformer, the father of the Protestant Reformation. They said, hey, we're just doing what Luther said to do. Martin Luther said this, and this is not some internet rumor. This is straight out of Martin Luther's writings. You can go to the library and get them. Martin Luther said of the Jews, he said, this is how you deal with the Jews. He said, first, their synagogues should be set on fire. Secondly, their homes should likewise be broken down and destroyed. Thirdly, they should be deprived of their prayer books and Talmuds. Fourthly, their rabbis must be forbidden under threat of death to teach anymore. Fifthly, passport and traveling privileges should be absolutely forbidden to the Jews. Sixthly, they ought to be stopped from usury. Seventhly, let the young and strong Jews and Jewesses be given the flail, the axe, the hoe, the spade, the distaff, the spindle, and let them earn their bread by the sweat of their noses. We ought to drive the rascally lazy bones out of their system. Therefore, away with them. If this advice of mine does not suit you, then find a better one, so that you and we may all be free of this insufferable devilish burden, the Jews. The words of Martin Luther. Here's another quote from Luther's same article. He called Jews these dreary dregs, this stinking scum, this dried up froth, this moldy leaven and boggy morass of Jewry. Jews are nothing but rotten, stinking, rejected dregs of their father's lineage. Therefore, whenever you see a genuine Jew, you may with a good conscience cross yourself and bluntly say, there goes a devil incarnate. Words of Martin Luther. One more, he says, you Jews are not worthy of looking at the outside of the Bible, much less of reading it. You should read only the Bible that is found under the sow's tail and eat and drink the letters that drop from there. So you can say to me, well, Dan, the Nazis weren't real Christians. Was Martin Luther a real Christian? The Christian world, Protestants at least, hail him as a holy hero. And the Jews know that Christians hail Martin Luther as a holy hero.
Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many.
Then Jesus said to his disciples, I tell you the truth, it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
On that day many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? And then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.
Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day of Christ's return will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed.
The man of sin is revealed. The man of sin is revealed.
The son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God.
According to Revelation, the Antichrist is not a secular power. This isn't about barcodes and credit cards or computers named the beast. This is about worship. This is a religious power. God is not trying to pick on anyone, but He's simply telling us that there is a religion that multitudes are following that is not adequately reflecting who God is.
بحمد ربك واستغفره